ዘንተ ወገታውያጋ ወራራራ የተረዳኦ ክውንነት ተሻዓይ ምዕራፍ
9. Analyzing Categories of Dialectics and Clarification, Part 1. Dialectics is a theory of the most general connections of the universe and its cognition, and also the method of thinking based on this theory. Anyone who wants to find a rational orientation in the world and change the world must have a knowledge of the dialectics of life and thought. Dialectical thinking has its roots far back in the past. The ideas of dialectics run right through the history of the development of human thought. They were profoundly expressed by such great thinkers as Kant and Hegel. In Hegel, dialectics embraces the whole sphere of reality and the life of the mind. Dialectical thought reached its highest peak in the philosophy of Marxism, in which materialist dialectics is expressed in a system of philosophical principles, categories, and laws. Dialectics arose and developed historically in a struggle against the metaphysical method, which is characteristically one-sided and abstract and inclined to absolutize certain elements within the whole. Metaphysical views have taken various historical forms. In modern times, metaphysics has taken the form of an absolutizing of the analysis and classification techniques in the cognition of nature. Because they are constantly repeated in scientific research, the techniques of analysis, experimental isolation, and classification have gradually imparted to scientific thinking certain general ideas, suggesting that in nature's workshop, objects exist in isolation, as they were, apart from one another. As philosophy and the specialized sciences have developed, the focus of the struggle between dialectics and metaphysics has shifted from attempts to explain the connection of things to interpretation of the principle of development. Here, metaphysical thought emerged at first in the form of simple evolutionism, and then in various concepts of creative evolution. So metaphysical thought is inclined to jump to extremes, to exaggerate some aspect of the object, its stability, recurrence, relative independence, and so on. In cognition, this leads to idealism or dogmatism, and in practice, to the justification of stagnation and reaction. The only antidote to metaphysics and dogmatism, which is metaphysics in another form, is dialectics, which will not tolerate stagnation and sets no limits to cognition and its scope. Dissatisfaction with what has been achieved is the element of dialectics, and revolutionary activity is its essence. In philosophy, categories are extremely general, fundamental concepts reflecting the most essential, law-governed connections and relationships of reality. Categories are the forms and stable organizing principles of the thought process, and as such, they reproduce the properties and relations of existence in global and most concentrated form. Categories are the result of generalization, of the intellectual synthesis of the achievements of science and socio-historical practice, and are therefore the key points of cognition, the moments when thought grasps the essence of things. This is the starting point for the analysis of the diversity, individual and particular, part and whole, form and content, etc. The categories are universal and lasting because they reflect what is most stable in the universe. Moreover, in the process of history, the content, role, and status of the categories change, and new categories, system, structure, for example, arise. Materialism, nothing comes from nothing. Things exist, and they have a history. In the beginning was the world, though while the world preceded words, words are extraordinarily important in interpreting and remaking the world. The physical world and our minds interact. When we interpret the world, we reinvent it. Ideas reflect and recreate the material world and are themselves a material force when acted on by masses of people. Ideas refract and recreate matter and become social forces when adopted by masses of people. All things are interrelated, interpenetrating, and interdependent. Nothing is random, nothing isolated. Of course, some things are more directly connected than others. The motive forces of history are production and reproduction/sexuality, the struggle for rational knowledge, which would include, for example, aesthetics, and the incessant historical struggle for freedom and creativity, truth, which rises from social practice. In schools, This means that we must look to the roots of schooling, mainly in the economy and in the role of government, both set up by the current economic system, capitalism. That would be where to look to answer the question, why have school? Broad answers might be warehousing kids, intellectual and ideological training, construction of real and false hope, creation of the next generation of workers, to serve as huge markets, textbooks, buses, salaries, etc. Nation building, feeding grounds for the military, and sites of class struggle. As in anything under capitalism, schools are contested terrain. Because things change, materialism and dialectics are necessarily connected. Dialectical materialism. It is, therefore, a study of relationships. In school, it is fairly clear that doing classroom reform without doing community social and economic reform, against hunger, for example, makes no sense. Dialectical materialism is also the study of transformation, perhaps best summed up in these two words, overcoming or revolution. The crux of dialectical materialism is that we can understand and change our world using methods developed over centuries at great sacrifice. The key to understanding dialectical materialism is understanding the role of the conscious action of people, deepened as theory reflects on and recreates social practice. Unity and struggle of opposites, contradictions. One becomes two. Struggle is permanent, unity temporary. Internal motion is primary over external. Find the main contradiction and the primary side of that contradiction, which will prevail. Quantity becomes quality. Quantitative change adds up to a qualitative leap. Quantitative change has limits that, exceeded, transform into qualitative change. Reinventing of the new, negation of the negation. Change is irrevocable, not circular, but like a spiral. When things change, we witness something entirely new, yet carrying forward aspects of what it was. Consider this process in teaching reading. You and a student join together unity and struggle in a wide variety of processes over time, quantity, and the student learns to read, a leap of quality. While this student is really the same person, he/she is also a literate person, different, reinventing of the new, bringing forward new contradictions, what to read and to what end. In our world today, the contradiction between the collective nature of production and private individual ownership of what is produced gives rise to inequality, social classes, and class struggle. The working classes of the world and the owning classes have only contradiction in common. Analysis of the categories. To enrich analysis by using the attainments of world philosophical thought, materialism developed the categories of Part 1, 1 to 6, and Part 2, 7 to 11, dialectics as the following. Appearance and essence 2, form and content. 3, relative and absolute for finite and infinite. 5, actual and potential 6, chance and necessity. 7, particular and general 8, likeness and difference. 9, cause and effect 10, objective and subjective. 11, theory and practice. Categories Part 1. 1. Appearance and essence. Philosophical categories reflect the universal forms of the objective world and a man's knowledge of that world. Essence, the internal content of an object, represents the unity of all the manifold and contradictory forms of an object's being, while appearance is any particular manifestation of an object, namely, the external forms of its existence. The categories of appearance and essence reflect the transition of thought from the diversity of manifested forms of an object to its internal content and unity, or concept. It is science's task to comprehend the essence of an object. In Greek and Roman philosophy, the essence was thought of as the principle for an understanding of things, and at the same time as the source of their actual genesis, while appearance was referred to as the evident and illusory image of things, or that which exists only as an object of opinion. According to Democritus, the essence of a thing is inseparable from the thing itself and is a product of those atoms of which the thing is constituted. For Plato, essence, which he called idea, is not reducible to corporeal and sensible being, namely, to an aggregate of actual appearances. Rather, it is beyond sensibility, non-material in nature, eternal, and infinite. In contrast to Plato, Aristotle held that essence, or the form of things, does not exist separate and apart from individual things, although he also believed that the matter of which a thing is made up does not constitute its essence. In medieval philosophy, essence was sharply distinguished from appearance. Essence was that which was invested in God, while earthly existence was understood as false and illusory. In modern philosophy, the opposition between essence and appearance assumed an epistemological character and was expressed in the notion of primary and secondary qualities. Kant recognized the objectivity of essence with the term thing in itself, holding to the principle that man cannot apprehend essence in its innermost being. According to Kant, appearance is not a manifestation of objective essence, but merely a subjective representation evoked by the latter. G. Hegel overcame the metaphysical opposition between essence and appearance by asserting that essence is, while appearance is the appearance of essence. At the same time, appearance, in Hegel's dialectical idealism, was interpreted as a concrete and perceptible manifestation of an absolute idea, which led to insoluble contradictions. In 20th century bourgeois philosophy, essence and appearance are interpreted from the idealist standpoint. Thus, neopositivism denies the objectivity of essence, accepting only appearances or sense data as real. Phenomenology interprets appearance as a self-revealed being, and essence as a purely ideal concept. And finally, in existentialism, the category of essence is supplanted by the concept of existence, and appearance is interpreted from a subjectivist point of view. Modern materialist philosophy was the first to reveal the true content of the interrelations between essence and appearance. Essence and appearance are universal objective properties of the material world. They can be seen as representing cognitive stages in the comprehension of an object. The two categories are always indissolubly linked. Appearance constitutes the form in which essence manifests itself, the essence being revealed in appearance. However, the unity of essence and appearance does not mean that the two coincide or are identical. If the form of manifestation were exactly correspondent to the essence of things, all science would be superfluous. Appearance is richer than essence, since it incorporates not only the revealed inner content and essential connections of an object, but also all its possible random relations and particular features. Appearances are dynamic and changeable, whereas essence constitutes that which is preserved through all changes. For example, under capitalism, the price of a particular commodity varies constantly, while its value will remain unchanged over a period of time. Nevertheless, essence, which is stable in relation to appearance, also changes. Not only are appearances transitory, mobile, fluid, but the essence of things is so as well. Theoretical knowledge of the essence of an object is linked to the discovery of its laws of development. Law and essence are concepts of the same kind, expressing the deepening of man's knowledge of phenomena, the world. Describing the development of human knowledge, Lenin stated, "Human thought goes endlessly deeper from appearance to essence, from the essence of the first order, as it were, to the essence of the second order, and so on without end." 2. Form and content. The cover of the book and the book are a unit and different categories. Interrelated philosophical categories. Content, the aspect that determines the character of the whole, is the sum of all the components of an object's properties, internal processes, relations, contradictions, and tendencies. Form is the internal organization of content. The relationship of content and form may be described as a unity, as almost a transition of one into the other. However, this unity is relative. Of the two interrelated categories, content represents the mobile, dynamic aspect of the whole. Form involves the stable connections of an object. According to Hegel, the relationship between content and form is an interrelation of dialectical opposites, a mutual transformation. According to the classical philosophy writers, content constitutes not the substratum per se, in itself, but its internal state, the totality of the processes that characterize the interaction of the constituent elements of the substratum with each other and with the environment, and that determine their existence, development, and replacement. In this sense, content is a process. Dialectical materialism conceptualizes form as a structure that develops and comes into being. According to Marx, it is necessary to trace the genesis of various forms and to understand the various stages of the real process by which forms are created, while taking into account the objective subordination of content and form. Elaborating on the Marxist analysis of the characteristics of development as a struggle between content and form, the constituent moments of which are the transformation of content into form and form into content, and the filling of the old form with new content, V.I. Lenin formulated the important thesis that any crisis, even any turning point, in a development inevitably leads to a discrepancy between the old form and the new content. For example, during the stage of imperialism, capitalist production relations, which constitute a form of the productive forces of capitalist society, lag behind and impede the development of the productive forces. There are various ways of resolving the contradictions between content and form. The old form, which no longer corresponds to the new content, may be completely cast aside. If the old form is used despite considerable changes in the content, the form does not remain unchanged, and the new content can and must manifest itself in any form, both new and old. It can and must regenerate, conquer, and subjugate all forms, not only the new, but also the old. Dialectical materialism bases its consideration of the problem of the interrelation of content and form in thought on the principle that thought reflects the objective world as both content and form. The content of thought includes diverse determinants of reality that are reproduced by consciousness, including the most general connections and relations, which assume specific logical functions under certain conditions and appear as forms of thought. The categorical structure of thought develops as knowledge develops. As the content of thought becomes fuller, deeper, and more comprehensive, thought assumes more developed, more concrete forms. 3. Relative and absolute. Truth is both we know, but we can always know more. The definition of relative truth: truth that is true at only one time and at one place. It's true for some people and not for others. It's true now, but it may not have been true in the past, and it may not be again in the future. It's always subject to change. It is also subject to perspective of people. The definition of absolute truth: whatever is true at one time and at one place is true at all times and at all places. What is true for one person is true for all persons. Truth is true whether we believe it or not. Truth is discovered or it is revealed. It is not invented by a culture or by religious men. Example of absolutes: we all need air to breathe. To live, we all need food and water. This is true for all people everywhere at all times. Gravity works the same everywhere here on the planet. For example, one cannot be dry and wet at the same time. Something cannot be true and not true at the same time. One must be false or both, but both cannot be true. One cannot go forward and backward at the same time. One cannot live in the past and the future at the same time. Time goes forward, it cannot go backward. No one is getting younger instead of older. You cannot have two mints without a valley. You cannot have a stick with one end. You cannot be asleep and awake at the same time. For example, George Washington was the first president of America, but he no longer is. His being the first president of the U.S. was true for all time and for all people in all places. There will never be a place at any time this is not true. He can never be the 20th president, so it is an absolute truth before his time. Believing something that is not true. What is true for one person is true for all people. If the ancient people believed the earth was flat, it is true for all men at all times and places. It will never be false that ancient man believed the earth was flat. It may not actually be true that the earth is flat, but it is true they believe this. So, this is truth for their time, but that is not a description of absolute truth. If one only believes it to be true, then they are not making a truth claim. Belief statements are not truth statements. One is simply declaring their belief. Such as if someone said, "I can fly." To you, that belief may be true, but not the statement itself. Truth is to be a justifiable belief. It needs to be proven at least logically and agree with reality. Absolute and relative are philosophical terms concerning the mutual interdependence of things, processes, and knowledge. Absolute means independent, permanent, and not subject to qualification. Relative means partial or transient, dependent on circumstances or point of view. For dialectics, the absolute is only the whole movement through various relative stages of understanding, but the progress of knowledge never comes to an end, so the absolute is relative. However, even a relative truth may nevertheless contain some grain of the whole absolute truth, so there is an absolute within the relative. Perception is relative to the observer, but the existence of an objective world is absolute. In general, absolute truth is whatever is always valid, regardless of parameters or context. The absolute in the term connotes one or more of a quality of truth that cannot be exceeded. Complete truth, unvarying and permanent truth. It can be contrasted to relative truth or truth in a more ordinary sense in which a degree of relativity is implied. 1. In philosophy, absolute truth generally states what is essential rather than superficial, a description of the ideal, to use Plato's concept, rather than the merely real, which Plato sees as a shadow of the ideal. Among some religious groups, this term is used to describe the source of or authority for a given faith or set of beliefs, such as the Bible. 2. In science, doubt has been cast on the notion of absolutes by theories such as relativity and quantum mechanics and theory of modern physics. Attempts to tie together all the known facts about the universe into a single unified theory. One example is string theory, theory of everything, could be seen as efforts to discover the absolute truth about this set of facts. 3. In pure mathematics, however, there is said to be proof for the existence of absolute truth. When it can be demonstrated that the negation of a statement leads to a contradiction, then the original statement is proved true. The logical proof of the statement, there exists an absolute truth, is almost trivial in its simplicity. Suppose we assert the negation of the statement, that is, that there is no such thing as absolute truth. By making that assertion, we claim that the sentence, there exists no absolute truth, is absolutely true. The statement is self-contradictory, so its negation, there exists an absolute truth, is true. This proof applies only to logic. It does not tell us whether any particular statement other than itself is true. It does not prove the existence or non-existence of God, the devil, heaven, hell, or little green people from another galaxy. Neither does it assert that we can always ascertain the truth or falsity of any arbitrary statement. The incompleteness theorem, proved by Kurt Gödel and published in 1931, actually showed that there exist logical statements whose truth value is undecidable. That is, they cannot be proved either true or false. 4. Finite and infinite. From the perspective of one single individual, there is a finite number of ideas, as this number is constrained by biology, the number of neuronal cells in which to process and store information, the number of neuronal connections to generate new ideas, lifeline in years, development, and experiences. On an individual basis, time is needed for biological reactions to take place, to mature, which depends on the finite number of brain cells that the individual possesses. Thus, ideas possess limits, but each individual's ideas are uniquely processed from a genetically unique mind, the product of brain chemistry. A mind, given time, can evolve and change. It is easy to see how mind-altering drugs allow the mind to change markedly, so do other influences. From the scientific perspective, calculating the potential information transmissible via synapses to numerous neuronal contacts, such as 1,000 billion neurons, each connected to as many as 10,000 others, or possibly up to 100,000 inputs per neuron asterisk, does seem to create an infinite number of possible variations, but for the present discussion, we can assess the overall potential of one brain as being finite. The scope of the individual mind can also be limited by perspective, and perspective helps to explain the nature of interdependency and diversity within one system. But in effect, our ideas are only limited by our knowledge, which is finite and incorporates what we can actually understand now, but given time, who knows what's in store. From the perspective of the whole of humanity, the mental potential creating ideas becomes unlimited, incalculable, or infinite for the following reasons. First, mind thoughts are constantly evolving as they give rise to innovations and inventions, and vice versa. If this were not so, technology would cease to exist, but new scientific and medical breakthroughs continue at an increasing rate. That is, the totality of the human mind is infinite, if not limited by artificial time constraints. The selection process begins after the initial onset of the rapid production of ideas, in which the mind is stimulated with an attitude of imagination utilizing various paths and possibilities. Hence, the biodiversity of human ideas incorporates the various levels or hierarchies, starting with the biological level, the genetic molecular, the biological organizational, and the habitat ecological. Then ideas are further generated and diversified and reflected at the social level, diversity of cultures, languages, interpretations of religion, superstitions, ethics, aesthetics, art and music, different ideologies, political and legal systems. Our emotions are key components to the way we develop ideas, but to what degree is not well understood. Second, each of us is genetically unique because there are an infinite number of possible combinations that nature uses to build individual genetic imprints. From just 4 DNA building blocks, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, the number of different combinations becomes potentially infinite in its possibilities. There are 3 billion base pairs in the human genome and 6 billion people, with the exception of identical twins and clones, from which to build an idea's imprint, in like manner to the building of unique individual genetic blueprints. By using all the raw material available, we calculate an infinite combination of possible ideas. Third, nature's currency works on infinity, so infinity is not foreign to the human mind. Mathematics is built on infinity, and numbers are infinite, as are compounds. For example, pharmaceutical drugs are made up of the 109 elements that exist in nature, but there is an infinite number of ways to combine 2 or more elements together in order to make a drug. As each combination comes up, the human mind comes up with alternative ideas in response. The use of particular technologies as they are invented leads to new technological ideas and ways to use the old for construction or destruction. The example of thalidomide is a typical one. Thalidomide was originally thought to be a harmless tranquilizer that you couldn't overdose on. It was later discovered that it deformed fetuses if taken during early pregnancy by virtue of being a very harmful drug, so the drug was taken out of production. If it were not for a chance doctor who used it to alleviate specific pain, we would never have known that thalidomide can cure particular ulcerations and lesions as found in leprosy sufferers. Thus, this new unexpected revelation caused scientists to create ideas of how it may also be used in the treatment of cancer, which is presently being trialed. Thus, a chance occurrence sparked hundreds of new ideas across the world. Our personal ideas come about by our experience, knowledge, etc., etc., but are also the result of someone else's ideas, and given time, the collective human mind's potential is infinite. Fourth, on an individual basis, autistic savants have freakish brilliance in a specific skill like art, music, or mathematical calculation, but are severely handicapped overall. These brains contribute to unconventional original ideas, which spawn new combinations in others. Fifth, renewed perspectives can induce paradigm shifts in outlook, which drive more ideas, making further change possible. While science still has so much more exploring to do, our minds remain infinite, but ideas can be limited by self-installed perceptions. We are in the information age where human imagination, not brute strength, is the driving force, and it's the ideas created inside billions of neural connections inside people's heads that provide knowledge, information, and wisdom, and it's that which counts. Ideas can, however, also be easily abused through human freedom, choice, and false information. If knowledge is infinite, then ideas must also be. A reasonable proposition, given that as a species we've co-evolved with our memes, ideas, and our genes. 5. Actual and potential. As the illiterate become literate, Actuality is often used to translate both energy and complete reality. It is normal for anything that is currently happening. The two words energy and reality were coined by Aristotle, and he stated that their meanings were intended to converge. In practice, most commentators and translators consider the two words to be interchangeable. They both refer to something being in its type of action or at work, as all things are when they are real in the fullest sense, and not just potentially real. For example, to be a rock is to strain to be at the center of the universe, and thus to be in motion unless constrained otherwise. Aristotle's concept of actuality and potentiality is striking for two reasons: its disarming simplicity and following at its place as a fundamental to understanding many of his other theories. Act and potency follow logically from Aristotle's thoughts on causation. Act and potency are dichotomous and parasitic in nature. That is to say, if something possesses the potential to be X, its potentiality to be X is reduced as it actually becomes X. In this way, pure potentiality is really nothing at all, that is, the closest thing to nothing, until it is actualized. In terms of Aristotle's causality, matter or material cause is potentiality, while form or formal cause is actuality. When a change occurs to produce X, X's matter undergoes the change into X and is constant throughout the process. For example, consider bronze. The matter of bronze has the potential to be many things such as a cube or statue. When a bronze cube is changed in a statue, the matter of the bronze remains the same throughout the change.
If a bronze cube's matter is bronze, then the cube is its form.
In other words, bronze is always potentially a cube among other things, and only becomes a cube when it receives the form of a cube. Act and potency are related to Aristotle's empirical epistemology, whereby knowledge is formed through sensation of the forms present in the external world. These forms do not need to be only shapes. They can also be sweetness, blueness, etc. During sensation, the intellect takes on the form of the sensed object without becoming the thing of the sort of form it is sensing. In physics, a potential may refer to the scalar potential or to the vector potential. In either case, it is a field defined in space, from which many important physical properties may be derived. Leading examples are the gravitational potential and the electric potential, from which the motion of gravitating or electrically charged bodies may be obtained. In electrochemistry, there are galvanic potential, volta potential, electrode potential, and standard electrode potential. In thermodynamics, potential refers to thermodynamic potential. Potential generally refers to a currently unrealized ability. The term is used in a wide variety of fields, from physics to the social sciences, to indicate things that are in a state where they are able to change in ways ranging from the simple release of energy by objects to the realization of abilities in people. Examples include in linguistics, the potential mood. The mathematical study of potentials is known as potential theory. It is the study of harmonic functions on manifolds. This mathematical formulation arises from the fact that, in physics, the scalar potential is irrotational, and thus has a vanishing Laplacian, the very definition of a harmonic function. In physics, a potential may refer to the scalar potential or to the vector potential. In either case, it is a field defined in space, from which many important physical properties may be derived. Leading examples are the gravitational potential and the electric potential, from which the motion of gravitating or electrically charged bodies may be obtained. In electrochemistry, there are galvanic potential, volta potential, electrode potential, and standard electrode potential. In thermodynamics, potential refers to thermodynamic potential. 6. Chance and necessity. The luck or chance is sometimes within hard work. Necessity, N, is a thing or a phenomenon in its universal, law-like relationship. It is the reflection of predominantly internal, stable, recurrent, and universal relationships in reality. It also reflects the basic directions of the development of reality. It expresses the penetration of knowledge into the depth of an object, as a result of which the object's essence and law are revealed. It is a means of transforming possibility into reality, whereby only one possibility of a given object under given conditions transforms it into reality. Chance, C, basically reflects external, non-essential, unstable, and singular relationships of reality. C expresses the starting point in the knowledge of an object. It is a result of the overlapping of independent causal processes or events. C is a form of expression of N and a supplement to it. When they express specific connections and relationships of objective reality, N and C are ontological categories. As stages of knowledge, they are epistemological categories. As forms of knowledge that reflect the objective world, N and C act as logical categories, characterizing the way in which thought moves from less profound to more profound knowledge. N and C fulfill a methodological function. TV is frequently formed from a mass of C, through which N makes its way. N is grounded in the material relationships of objects, and is the natural result of a preceding course of development. Given the appropriate conditions, necessary phenomena develop in a specific order. They occur precisely this way, and in no other way. C is generally caused by conditions external to a given phenomenon, as a result of which C may occur in different ways. Depending on the causes that give rise to N, the forms in which it manifests itself, the structure and nature of its action, and also its role in science, N may be subdivided into the following 7 basic types. 1. Internal N, produced by the nature of the phenomena and processes of the objective world. 2. External N, brought about by attendant factors. 3. N of a more general fundamental order, the action of which extends to a comparatively broad range of phenomena in reality. 4. N of a less general order, the action of which involves a comparatively narrow range of phenomena. 5. Complex N, which determines the behavior of an aggregate of objects and is expressed by statistical laws. 6. Simple N, which determines the behavior of individual objects and is expressed by dynamic laws. 7. N that governs by phenomena in reality, and that may at the same time be expressed by both statistical and dynamic laws. C may also be subdivided into 5 types. 1. Internal C, intrinsically linked with a given N. 2. External C, appearing as something extraneous in relation to a given N, and produced for the most part by subordinate factors. 3. Objective C, which results from the influence of various objective conditions. 4. Subjective C, produced by subjectivism and voluntarism, a violation of objectively operating laws. 5. Favorable or unfavorable C, respectively accelerating or retarding the development of various aspects of reality. Philosophy has studied the problem of N and C since ancient times. The categories of N and C have been interpreted in different ways. Negation of C, Democritus, B. Spinoza, P. D. Halbach, inevitably led to fatalism. Certain idealist philosophers asserted that N is produced and introduced by consciousness, D. Hume, neo-positivism. Others, while acknowledging that N exists in nature, rejected N in social life, neo-Kantians and others. Metaphysical materialists and certain naturalists, C. Wolf, Lamarck, did not see the link between N and C and regarded them as absolute opposites. G. Hegel demonstrated the unsoundness of separating N and C, and he developed a dialectical conception of their interrelationship. In reality, every phenomenon at one and the same time, but in different ways, is both random and necessary, and contains aspects of C and N in their interpenetration. Thus, the appearance of an outstanding individual in a given country at a given time is C. But if this individual becomes the leader of a movement, and in this capacity begins to express the movement's interests, this individual represents N. The occurrence of a particular mutation is N, the result of a specific physiochemical process. At the same time, with respect to the organism and population, the mutation appears as a chance phenomenon. The dialectical interrelation between N and C is manifested in different ways at various structural levels of matter in both nature and society. In nature, there are only blind unconscious forces, the interaction of which reveals nature's laws and necessity. In non-living nature, N has an essentially unequivocal function. In the transition from non-living to living nature, C is manifested to a somewhat greater degree. In objects of living nature, there are a greater number of interacting laws that influence the correlation of N and C here, and becomes interwoven with C to a greater degree than in non-living nature. At the same time, the perfecting of organisms during the course of the development of organic systems testifies to the ever-increasing triumph of necessity over chance. Chapter 10. Analyzing categories of dialectics and
ገደባት ናይ ቆፃል ይኸውን ይቐኒየልና